Is the Chump administration going to abide by the Supreme Court? No. No, they are not. They are saying, go fuck yourself, Supreme Court. Who the fuck are you guys to know right from wrong? Don't believe me? Pay attention.
You sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager.
I don't know if that's good or bad, Mr. President.
He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under temporary protected status?
Do you plan to ask
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost.
All right, so we're going to listen to Pam Bondi. This is the Attorney General, and they're talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Okay, so Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You also have that Andre. So this isn't the homosexual. This isn't Khalil, the guy that was pro-Palestinian. You got like 3 major cases right now. These are all important because these are test balloons. How is the Chump administration going to deal with mistakes that they made? Okay, you sent 200 people to El Salvador. You made 2 mistakes. Are you going to correct your mistakes? And they're like just laughing it up and just having a good old time. Pam Bondi is going to assert some bullshit here. Let's take a listen.
Foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
Okay, so that's bullshit. She's saying 2 courts had said that they both said that they were MS-13. But all that they said what the government has associated with his attire. He was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat. So if you wear a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie, then that means you're MS-13. I mean, there's a lot of people that like the Bulls. I mean, that's Michael Jordan, right? Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, that's the Bulls. I remember I used to draw the Bulls logo over and over again. So if you like the Bulls and you have a Chicago basketball team, their apparel, you're wearing their apparel, somehow that's MS-13, that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous. Abrego Garcia says he's not MS-13. He's not a part of any gang. So even though it says here they denied his asylum claim in 2019, an immigration judge barred Abrego Garcia's return to El Salvador because of what he describes as a fear of persecution by the Barrio 18, who had been extorting his family's pupusa business. And that order had remained in effect when he was arrested and deported. So even though he didn't get the asylum claim, basically he's kind of in purgatory because he didn't get the asylum claim, but they did bar him from being deported. So if he's MS-13, why would this judge bar him from being deported? Oh, he might be MS-13, but then he's going to get hurt by this, Barrio 18. My guess is the evidence that the Barrio 18 is going to hurt him is stronger, if not valid, whereas the evidence against him being MS-13 is bullshit. It's totally, either it's very weak or it's total bullshit. So basically the judge is like, okay, you're not MS-13, you came here for asylum, and this Barrio 18 is going to mess with you. I mean, just read what we're seeing right here. We'll come back. Let's listen to some more of this.
Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
You have to see this. This stuff is magic. Once you apply it, it's there to stay. Seriously, it's that permanent.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
You're doing a great job. Thank you, Mr. President. So it says here the Supreme Court's liberal wing just made just that point Thursday an opinion that accompanied the court's order. The government's argument implies that it could just deport and incarcerate any person, including American citizens, without legal consequence. They could just go anywhere, round anybody up that they want to, and as long as a court does not intervene, they can do it without any legal consequence, so long as it does it before a court can intervene. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote, joined by Kagan and Jackson. That view refutes itself. The liberal justices said they would have denied outright government's request for relief from Zenius's order. So, I'm going to read, I got the order right here, right? This is Kristi Noem versus Armando Abrego Garcia. They're flat out breaking this. They're flat out breaking this order, this ruling. This is Noem v. Garcia, 2025. Let's keep watching.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant.
All right, before we get to this asshole Stephen Miller, let's just read a couple paragraphs, okay? So this is cite as 604 U.S.-2025, Supreme Court of the United States, number 248949. Kristi Noem, Secretary, Department of Homeland Security. She's the one that killed that puppy, right? Et al. V. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia et al. On the application to vacate injunction entered by the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland, April 10th, 2025. On March 15th, 2025, the U.S. removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia from the U.S. to El Salvador, where he is currently detained in the Center for Terrorism Confinement, the CECOT. The U.S. acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. The United States government, so this is Chump, right? This is Donald Chump. The U.S. acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order which forbade his removal to El Salvador. And so therefore the removal to El Salvador was illegal. Now the United States represents that the removal to El Salvador was the result of an administrative error. The U.S. alleges, however, that Abrego Garcia has been found to be a member of the gang MS-13. Hey! Knock it off! MS-13, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return to the U.S. would pose a threat to the public. Abrego Garcia responds that he is not a member of MS-13, that he's lived safely in the U.S. with his family for a decade and has never been charged with a crime. On Friday, April 4th, the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland entered an order directing the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. On the morning of April 7th, the U.S. filed this application to vacate the district court's order. The Chief Justice entered an administrative stay and subsequently referred the application to the court. The application is granted in part and denied in part, subject to the direction of this order. Let's watch some of this.
Because they're totally slanted, because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Chump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order...
Okay, so what's incredible about this conversation is Donald Chump is going to say that the Supreme Court actually ruled in his favor. We just read that what they did was illegal. Sending Abrego Garcia was illegal. We just read that. So let's keep on reading, because maybe they're illiterate, maybe they don't understand what the point of words are, maybe they don't understand what words mean. The application is granted in part and denied in part, subject to the direction of this order. Due to the administrative stay issued by the Chief Justice, the deadline imposed by the District Court has now passed. To that extent, the government's emergency application is effectively granted in part, and the deadline in the challenged order is no longer effective. The rest of the District Court's order remains in effect, but requires clarification on remand. So what's that mean? Well, it's saying that the deadline has passed. So therefore, it's no longer effective. You know, you're supposed to, report him. If you deport him, you're supposed to bring him back. You're supposed to bring him back on April 7th, a week ago. Well, you passed that deadline. Well, since you passed the deadline, there is no deadline. What the fuck are you talking about? That makes no sense. That means it's an ongoing deadline. That means he was supposed to have been back a week ago, but these motherfuckers are breaking this order, and they continue to break the order, and they keep on lying about the damn thing. So not only did they say that 2 courts had said he was MS-13, but they also said that the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. No, they did not. No, they did not. Now, let's listen to this lawyer here, because he's going to talk about a part I'm about to get to.
I think the judge sort of appropriately shut that down very quickly by saying that the Supreme Court affirmed her order, asked for clarification on one verb, and she provided that clarification in her subsequent order yesterday evening.
So the verb is facilitate, right? And effectuate. So let's read what he's talking about right now. The rest of the District Court's order remains in effect, but requires clarification on remand. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador, and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador, which means he gets a fucking hearing. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the District Court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the District Court's authority. The District Court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The order heretofore entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. So this means we're going with this thing, right? So what did we just say here? Well, they said he needs to be returned. The only thing they want to do was for the Maryland judge, was it Paula Zenius, X-I-N-I-S, Zenas? They just want her to clarify what the intended scope of the term effectuate in the District Court's order is supposed to mean. They said it's unclear, and it may exceed the District Court's authority. So that's what they wanted, for her to define what effectuate means. And if you just heard with that lawyer, this is Kilmar Abrego Garcia's lawyer, he just said that she had already, defined the term. So they just said define a term, a verb, she defined the verb, and then there it is. That's it. Now here's a statement of Justice Sotomayor along with Kagan and Jackson. Justices Kagan and Jackson join respecting the court's disposition of the application. The U.S. government arrested Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia in Maryland and flew him to a terrorism confinement center in El Salvador, where he's been detained for 26 days and counting. To this day, the government has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, or his confinement in a Salvadorian prison, nor could it. The government remains bound by an immigration judge's 2019 order expressly prohibiting Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador because he faced a clear probability of future persecution there, and demonstrated that El Salvador's authorities were and would be unable or unwilling to protect him. The government has not challenged the validity of that order. Instead of hastening to correct its egregious error, the government dismissed it as an oversight. The government now requests an order from this court permitting it to leave Abrego Garcia, a husband and father without a criminal record, in a Salvadorian prison for no reason recognized by the law. The only argument the government offers in support of its request that the United States courts cannot grant relief once a deportee crosses the border. Well, that's plainly wrong. See Rumsfeld v. Padilla and Boumediene v. Bush, 2004-2008, respectively. The government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence, so long as it does so before a court can intervene. See Chump v. U.S. 2025. No, Trump v. JGG. What is this? Trump v. JGG. I saw the headline, and I think it has to do with that Khalil guy. JGG. So that's, Trump versus three initials. Who's JGG? We don't know. Sotomayor dissenting. That view refutes itself because every factor governing request for equitable relief manifestly weighs against the government. Nikin v. Holder, 2009. I would have declined to intervene in this litigation and denied the application in full. Nevertheless, I agree with the court's order that the proper remedy is to provide Abrego Garcia with all the process to which he would have been entitled had he not been unlawfully removed to El Salvador. That means the government must comply with its obligation to provide Abrego Garcia with due process of law, including notice and an opportunity to be heard in any future proceedings. Reno v. Flores, 1993, and must also comply with its obligations under the Convention Against Torture. See Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. Federal law concerning detention and removal of immigrants continues, of course, to be binding as well. 8 U.S.C. to Section 1226A requiring a warrant before a non-citizen may be arrested and detained pending a decision on removal. In order to revoke conditional release, the government must provide adequate notice and promptly arrange an initial informal interview to afford the alien an opportunity to respond to the reasons for the revocation stated in the notification. Moreover, it has been the government's own well-established policy to facilitate an alien's return to the United States if the alien's presence is necessary for continued administrative removal proceedings in cases where a non-citizen has been removed pending immigration proceedings. See U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In the proceedings on remand, the district court should continue to ensure that the government lives up to its obligation to follow the law. So, good times, right? Good times, great country, B105.
Was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court
to
is
get
asking
him back?
to...
And
that-
what was the
is
ruling
that-
in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no...
He was like 9-0 in our favor. So he is listening to Stephen Miller say that it was in our favor, and it wasn't in your favor. You did something illegal, so you got to bring him back. That's what the Supreme Court order says. You need to get the order directly because all these little kiss-ass sycophants are not telling you the truth there, Chump administration.
No district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
presidente
what is
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you you plan to return him?
Well, supposedly they're suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
How
seen
can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So this is incredible that, basically, in a way, he makes fun of the damn media, but it's almost like, he's like, it's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. If you're such a powerful guy, you fucking piece of shit, then Chump, you need to you made a mistake, right? You're a powerful guy. Can you not send a fucking plane to El Salvador? You made a mistake. You send a plane back here. You tell this guy, I made a mistake. I need to bring this guy back. And it fucking happens. So he's saying that it's preposterous because what am I supposed to do? Just release him, and then without his permission, then I'm just smuggling him into the United States? No, you have his fucking permission if he reads the damn order. This is incredible because if the Chump administration breaks the Supreme Court, then we don't have three branches of government. The entire English Civil War was about Parliament versus the King. Do we have, a legislative department? Do we have a judicial department? Do we believe in enumerated powers? Do we have a constitution? Do we have a Bill of Rights? If you're going to take away our rule of law, if you're going to take away our Bill of Rights, if you're going to take away our three branches of government, is that not an incredible case for revolution in defense of the Constitution? That's an incredible case for revolution in defense of the Constitution. The English Civil War and the American Civil War was quite purifying. The English Civil War says, no, you can't just have one autocratic dictator, raping the shit out of everybody else. You need a parliament. And then the American Civil War says, no, you can't just look at black people as subhuman and then make them pick your fucking cotton. So both civil wars, that I know of, English Civil War, American Civil War, they turned out good for the good side. The good people won. The good people won in the American Civil War and the English Civil War. This motherfucker's talking about third term and shit. That breaks the Constitution. What, you thought it was a big shocker that Mr. 34 felon, when it comes to the Supreme Court, you do have that Andrew Jackson. What did Andrew Jackson say?
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way.
So let's take a look at some of this. The government's conduct in this litigation poses an extraordinary threat to the rule of law. Of course it does. You have all these fucking Epsteiners. You got all these war criminals. They do as the fuck as they please. We're supposed to be, a free country with the free people. The people are supposed to be, if there's any sovereignty, the sovereignty relies in the people of the United States. And yet, instead of having a democracy where the government's afraid of the people, instead we have a dictatorship where the people are afraid of the government. And so I got two orders here, and we're going to take a look at what the orders have said. There's a hearing for, they say, Tuesday. Today is Monday, April 14th, 2025. So, there's some better people that's covering this, but I just want to cover the specific, information. Here's the two orders, right? Here's the two orders, and let's take a look at these. So, U.S. District Court, District of Maryland, Civil Action 825 CV 00951 PX. And PX, that represents, Paula Zenas. Order, Right? So this is Garcia v. Noem. For the reasons discussed during today's status conference, the court finds that the defendants have failed to comply with this court's order at ECF number 51. In advance of the conference, the court had directed defendants to file a supplemental declaration from an individual with personal knowledge addressing the following. 1. The current physical location and custodial status of Abrego Garcia. 2. What steps, if any, defendants have taken to facilitate Abrego Garcia's immediate return to the U.S. And 3. What additional steps defendants will take when to facilitate his return. ECF number 51. Defendants made no meaningful effort to comply. Instead, they complained that the order was unreasonable and impracticable and involved sensitive country-specific considerations wholly inappropriate for judicial review. ECF number 59 at 2. So, this all is insane. I mentioned Andrew Jackson. He said to the Supreme Court made their ruling, so now they got to enforce it. Which means now the Supreme Court either has to, show up to the president's door and say, hey, you need to do your damn job, or they need to get the army, or they need to get the U.S. Marshals, they need to get the people, they need to start a citizens' army, and in order to effectuate the rule of law, you need to have a citizens' army to effectuate it. And so, when it comes to Abrego Garcia, I forget what my point was, but they have no legal authority, no justification, no grounds, and no standing. Let's keep going. During the hearing, the court posed straightforward questions, including where is Abrego Garcia right now, what steps the defendants take it to facilitate his return while the court's initial order on injunctive relief was in effect from the afternoon of April 4th, 2025 through the morning of April 7th, since 6:35 p.m., So, let's see here. Defendant's counsel responded he could not answer these questions, and at times, they fired the guy. Erez Ruvini. So there was a guy that basically was honest in terms of, hey, what evidence do you have? He's like, I don't know what evidence we have. I haven't been told any evidence. So he already kind of let the cat out of the bag. There is no evidence. They have no evidence that this Abrego Garcia is MS-13. What, he's got a Chicago Bulls hat on? Well, must be, fucking MS-13. Insane. In-fucking-sane. And then what, if you're a Lakers, is that, if you believe in the LA Lakers, does that make you Trinde Aragua? If you're a big Bengals fan, does that make you Barrio 18? And I guess if you love the Colorado Rockies, I guess that just makes you the Bloods. And if you love the Dallas Cowboys, I guess that makes you what? Does that make you a Crypt? I don't know. I've never heard that with the Bulls. I've heard that, with Crips, you have to pull one leg up or something. So if you got one leg, pulled up, then that makes you a Crypt. I've never heard of the Bulls thing. Bloods, it's red. So that would make, if anything, I would think that a person with the Chicago Bulls might be a Blood, not necessarily MS-13. And all we're saying, I'm not even saying that we should defend MS-13. I'm saying give this guy a hearing. Show the fucking evidence. What evidence do you have? A judge wants, to get the people who here are illegal, they want to, send them back home. If they need to be deported, then they should be deported. And so once you put it in front of a judge, then let's hear what they have to say. They're breaking the law right now, and they're flagrantly breaking the law. And this is going to spell doom for America because, well, then who should we listen to if we're not going to listen to the three branches? Just the king? Is that it? Just the autocratic dictator? Let's see. Defendant's position. Let's see. See Noem v. Abrego Garcia, 2025, slip opinion at 2. This court's perspective. It's hereby ordered that beginning April 12th and continuing each day thereafter, until further order of the court, defendants shall file daily on or before 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time a declaration made by an individual with personal knowledge as to any information regarding 1, the current physical location and custodial status of Abrego Garcia, 2, what steps, if any, defendants have taken to facilitate his immediate return to the U.S., and 3, what additional steps defendants will take and when to facilitate his return, A follow-up in-person hearing will be scheduled for Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 at 4 p.m. To the extent plaintiffs seek additional relief, their motion shall be filed no later than 5 p.m. on Saturday, April 12th, 2025. Defendants shall file any response by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, April 13th, 2020. So ordered. Paula Zenius. Defendant's assertion that foreign affairs cannot operate on judicial timelines sorely misses the point. ECF number 59. All parties appearing before this court are obligated to comply with court-ordered deadlines unless and until they demonstrate good cause to depart from them. See Neurosum Rug Corporation v. Parvizian, 4th Circuit 2008. Defendants' vague reference to foreign affairs alone does not justify their lack of compliance. And then here's this other order here. Do I want to read this whole order? No, I don't want to read this whole order. But I will just, sort of capture some of it so you can see what's going on here. Seems like it's a lot of the same things. Signed by Paula Zenas. It's dated April 10th. The court will hold an in-person status conference Friday, April 11th. So that's from in the past. So is this the first order that went down? I'm not for sure, but there you go. Noem v. Garcia did not go in the president's way.
How concerned are you that you not...
Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country?
He's like, why do you keep asking me these tough questions, okay? Can't you just kiss my fucking ass? Can't you just suck my fucking dick, jiggle my balls a little bit? Jesus Christ, And give me some fucking A1 jelly. Give me some A1 and put some petroleum jelly on this rim and pour some A1 steak sauce. How about a reach around, the courtesy of a reach around?
Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over, and that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump,
She had a great question and he doesn't like it.
What relief will you seek if you don't get the answer that you seek?
I can't get into details about what relief we're going to be seeking. It really does depend on what the government comes up with in their next filing. What I can say is that we're not going to be sitting back and sort of waiting to see what they have to say on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. If they don't take this order, if they don't take today's order seriously, we'll respond seriously.